All right, so I'm just going to show you basically how to take your internal CSS here and basically externalize it. Now, the first thing you need to do is just like when we made Bootstrap, you need to make sure that it's set up properly, because if you go to do this, it's going to save it into the wrong file. So if you remember in the beginning, we had to do the site, manage sites or new site. You start off with new site and you made a site. And then when we hit Bootstrap, it automatically made the file and folders for you. It automatically made, the Bootstrap and CSS and all that other jazz that you needed. And it put them in the correct folder. So you have to make sure that's set up. Come on. Yeah. It's a little slow. So I'm going to do site. I'm going to manage sites. And I'm just going to make sure, because this is actually set up to a previous one. We're going to do cone interest site. Double click on that guy. And I'm just going to make sure it's going to the right folder. So in this case, it's to my thumb drive, which is what you should never do. Select folder and hit save. And it'll hit done. Okay. So now it knows if I look over in my file section, I can see the index, which is where I'm currently in. But I can also see the other things that I have in here. All the other elements. Okay. So this is now set up correctly. And I'm going to show you basically how to take your stuff and externalize your CSS from the internal to external. And the reason why this is important is because when you go to make your subpages, you're going to want them to all have this CSS. And instead of having to repeat it on every subpage, you could just have an external one that they are all sourcing. So if for some reason you decided that you don't like this font, you have to go into every file, every HTML file and change your CSS up on the top here. You would just change that one source. And it's pretty useful. So there's actually a built-in tool to do it, and we could do it manually, but we'll just use the built-in tool. First, I want to show you one other thing. Remember when I had you guys do the internal to your inline CSS to into internal, so it ended up here. I'm just going to show you something. Let's say I put one in here. So let's say on this list item, actually let's find something else. We'll do a paragraph. Okay, let's say on this paragraph I put style and we put color. We'll say blue. Okay, just so you can see. All right, so I made that paragraph blue. I can actually quickly take this and have it be put up in here real easily. So all you got to do is, where did I put it? So I would just highlight it here, and then you go to Tools, CSS, and convert Inline to CSS rule. And it's going to want to set it to by default. So it's going to tell you what the CSS rules it's going to make to try and select it specifically, and that's fine. But what we want to do is we want to do the head of the document. We're going to go ahead and put on the, so it's internal here, and we'll hit OK. Boop, and you're going to see it went ahead and added that rule. Now, unfortunately, because it only used through selectors, it changed all of them blue, because it says in the dot container, which is what this is, in a dot row, and in a column 4, in every paragraph, and so it did all of those. So unless you had an ID specifically for that, it's going to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and undo that, so I could show you how to not do that. Okay. So in here, we could also add an ID equals, and we'll say sec par, second paragraph. Okay. So then again, I'll just do the same thing. And so if you have any inline that you need to get converted, this is the way to do it. So Tools, CSS, and convert inline boop-a-doop to the head of this document. And you can see right there, CSS sec par. So it's already got the ID. And then I'll hit OK, and it will work. And now you'll see up on the top here, it created a new CSS rule. And now it works correctly. And I just got to make sure that it removed it down here. I don't think... oh, well, it didn't remove the ID, but it removed the other CSS. So you can see that's more the correct way to go about making it. All right. We're basically going to do the same thing, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to take our internal here and actually convert it to external. So what I want you to do is inside the style here, just start from your first CSS rule to the last one. And you do the same thing, Tools, CSS, and you're going to go ahead and move CSS rules. And it's going to want to, because this already has this Bootstrap CSS, it's going to want to attach it there. I don't want to put it into that. I want to create a new one. So we're going to do a new style sheet. I'll hit OK. Make sure it's going to CSS, and then we're going to make sure it's going to CSS, and it looks like I already have a styles. Alright, well, we'll just call this one styles. You should just call your style styles. Alright, you can see what the URL it's going to make, and then we hit save. No. Oh, it was styles. Okay. Style. I'll hit save. That way I won't interrupt it. Okay. And what you're going to see is up on the top here, inside my style, there's nothing anymore, but it still looks the same. So I can actually get rid of this. Just delete the style, you know. Oops, sorry. So inside of here is where I had all my style sheets. So I'm just going to remove those. And you can see what it did. It made a link to the new CSS style sheet. And if I go up here, here it is. Here's all of the stuff that was originally in there. It just went ahead and made a new one and pasted it in here. And that's very useful because now when I make another one, the defaults will all be here. And we can change something here and it will change for all of them. All right, so we're going to say that that is good and I'm happy with it and what have you. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, Control S. All right, and then, or Command S if you're, file save. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the site here. So I'm going to show you how to make your subpages. This is how you should go about doing it, okay? So first you want to externalize your CSS like that. And subsequently later on now, when you make your subpages, you should change your CSS there and not internally. So web design docs, code interest site, CSS, and let me see. The new one I called was style, right? Yeah, so we're going to get rid of styles. Okay. Wait, let me double check. Yeah, we'll just make sure that's saved. Hit Control S. I don't know if you saw the asterisk up there. That means it's not saved. Okay. So that's all good. All right. So I have this index. All I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, and I'm going to do Control C or Command C and Control V or Command V. And now I got index copy. And I'm just going to name this what my other other elements are. So I got an about. So I'm going to call this one about.html. Okay. Yay. All right. So we got a duplicate of it right there. So now what I'm going to do is back in here, I'm just going to go ahead and open it up. So I'm going to do open, and we're going to open about, and it's going to be exactly the same thing as the index because it's just a copy of it. But what I can do now is I can go through and I'll get rid of any of the extra content that I don't want. So for instance, this carousel, I want to keep the top, right? Because typically the top is always the same. So everything that's part of, the nav bar and the title and all that, I'm going to leave alone. But this next section where it says div container, and then I got this row that has all this other stuff, I'm going to grab everything that's basically inside of this container, and I'm going to delete it like this. So all I have now is that second container. Okay, so and you might have just one container. So imagine I didn't have that second container. You see how it's this container fluid. So I would just delete everything that was inside there, and then I would just start working on my next page. And so what I could do is just again do normal. We'll go to Insert, Bootstrap Components, and I'm going to say Grid Row. And let's say I want to do 3 articles across. So I'll say 3. That's good. And it will do a row, and it will do 3 separate columns for me. Oh, not like that. I'm in here. And then I can start putting in my content in here. So, put like a P element and stuff. So I'll just do P. And then we'll just go ahead and add a lorem ipsum. Alright, so I'll put my P in there, and I'll put a P in here, and I'll put a P in here, and then I have my 3 columns, right? So I got this one row, and then I would just do, my next section and what have you. Now again, like I said, let's say I don't like this font, and I want my site to have different fonts. Alright, so now this is my about page. You see the tops are the same because I just copied it. But let's say I wanted this font to somehow be different. I want it to somehow be different. What I could do is this. I could go to that style CSS sheet that I had, and I could say, or let's say I want all my fonts to be a different color or something, all my P fonts. All I gotta do is just do P, and then I go, let's make them all red. Color, and we'll say red. Okay? And what you're gonna see is it's gonna change it for here. Let's make sure I save that. But if I go to index, it will also change. Well, this one's got blue because I have that one specific. This one's selecting that one. But any subsequent ones will also turn blue. Okay? Or sorry, will turn red. Because they're all using this style. So if I click on this one and click style, see it's the same style sheet. So now, because I have an external style sheet, anything I do on this one affects any of the subpages. And so to make the other subpages, I would just duplicate either this one. I hit Control S. And, because I'm sorry, Control S. I would duplicate, let's say, the about one or the index one again. Control C, Control V. And call this one, you know, I don't know what my other link was. We'll say information. Okay? And then I can just, that work? There we go. I could just, in here, again, I'll keep the top part just the way it was, right? Because I wanted to keep this and the nav part, because that's always the same. But I can change the next section here, get rid of all that, all of the body here. And then I would just do, you know, my next thing. I'd do another, you know, grid row with column, and we'll say I only want 2, right? And I'd have content. Then I would do, I would do another grid row with column, and we'll say this one's just going to be 1, right? And so I'll have, and you can see, like, see how there's 2 here? How do you see it? See 1, 2, and then 1. And I would just put my content, you know, inside of these. Okay, and then I would have my next subpage. And that's how you're going to make all your subpages. You're just going to duplicate that index after you've externalized the CSS. Because that way, you can see there's no, when they go to use your site, it'll load up this external CSS sheet, and you can, it'll load that up, and then subsequently, they won't have to reload it for each subpage because they're all sourcing the same one. And that way all the fonts will be the same, everything will be the same. All right? Go team.